Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and in today's video let's explain the difference between the managed and selected modes in climb and descent. So the difference between climb versus open climb and descent versus open descent mode. We're going to show this with a practical example over here on a very short repositioning flight from Düsseldorf to Cologne. First of all, a little bit of theory, and then I'm going to show you how all of that is going to work in action. So the theory is that Airbus wants you to use managed modes as much as possible. They basically tell you to maximize managed modes. Now, this basically means that whenever possible you should fly in climb or descent mode. However, there are situations in which it may be desirable to change to a selected mode, namely open climb or open descent. Now, first of all, a little bit of theory. You can see right now that I've set up a situation over here in which we are going to depart Düsseldorf with an initial turn to the left, and I have inserted an altitude restriction of 3000 feet at Delta Lima 239er up here. However, initial climb is going to be 5000, and ATC is going to want us to respect our departure constraints. Now, what does that mean? Well, we are going to do the following. We will take off in managed mode, and after Delta Lima 239er we can continue our climb. So we assume this one to be a standard SID restriction. As you can see, with a higher FCU altitude, namely 5000 feet dialed in, and the 3000 restriction up there, the Airbus has automatically shown 3000 feet in magenta over here because it expects to level off at 3000 feet. Now, the magenta altitudes are only going to be shown when the Airbus actually expects to level off over there, so only when the constraint in question is going to influence your climb profile. If we had, for example, a restriction of 5000 feet or less, then we would get 5000 in blue because the airplane would cross this one below 5000 anyway. So that's just a little bit of theory to understand why the altitudes may be shown in blue or in magenta. Now, going on from there, ATC might clear us to climb above this published altitude restriction. If they were to do that, then there were two ways to do this. You could either enter it in the flight management system, or you could do it through the FCU. Now, basic Airbus philosophy is to do short-term changes on the FCU. In other words, only if it's a permanent change, do it through the FMS, otherwise use the FCU. Since we are talking about a short-term change here, it's a single restriction that we don't need to abide. If there are further restrictions down the line, we might still abide them. It may be a good idea to go into selected mode, so open climb, and once we've passed this constraint, we can then go back into managed mode, so into climb mode. Now, that much about basic Airbus theory. Let's go ahead and have a look into how that's going to look like in a practical example then. So our park and brake is released, our ECAM memo is on takeoff no blue, so let's go ahead and perform our takeoff. Okay, man toga, SAS runway, auto thrust blue. 100 knots, checked. V1, rotate. Positive climb, gear up. And we'll put the autopilot on so that we got a little bit more time for explanations. So, now we're basically on the normal takeoff profile. We are nicely climbing out, and we are now going to start our acceleration. Speed, and you can see it went into alt constraint star. So this basically tells us it's going to level off in 3000, flap 0, and once we have passed this waypoint, it is going to continue the climb to the FCU selected altitude. But what if ATC were to give us the shortcut as we've explained on the ground now? Well, there's an easy thing for you to do. You've got two options, either delete it in the FMS or use the FCU. As I mentioned, Airbus philosophy is to use the FCU for short-term changes, and this definitely is a short-term change. So now we are in altitude constraint mode with climb armed, because it is going to automatically resume the climb after this waypoint, but ATC wants us to climb now. So now we go into the selected mode, in this case open climb, and we are going to continue the climb disregarding the FMS restriction. So the basic point here is both climb and descent modes are going to abide FMS restrictions, while the open climb and open descent modes are literally just going to get you to the target altitude while taking into account other values such as the commanded speed only. And that is the basic theory behind the two modes. Now, we're going to fly a little bit of this departure, and then we are going to start our approach to Cologne. Let's take a direct to the initial approach fixed leg 2 for an ILS approach 14 left, and then we will see a similar thing happen in the descent now. Now, again, the preferred mode by Airbus is to take the managed mode, so that is the descent mode rather than open descent. However, in order to be able to use both the climb and the descent modes, the airplane needs to know laterally what it's supposed to do. Now, this basically means that you can only use the managed vertical modes while you're in nav mode. As soon as you go out of nav mode, the airplane doesn't know where it is supposed to fly anymore, so likewise it cannot determine where it's supposed to be vertically, and therefore is going to revert to open climb or open descent mode, respectively to vertical speed if you change from nav mode into heading mode while you're on a descent. I'm going to make a small demonstration of that in a few moments. So we're overflying our top of descent now. Let's go into thrust, idle and descent, so into managed descent now, and managed is just going to follow the green dot we've got over here. However, now we want to revert to a selected mode because ATC is going to give us a heading. So let's say we are about to turn heading 140. What we will see is that the plane now reverts to speed and vertical speed mode in order to maintain the previous vertical speed it had. The reason it reverts into vertical speed rather than open descent is because the airplane doesn't really know, shall I descend as quickly as possible, or is it just a small vector of the route where it's best to just follow the previous vertical speed in order to follow the profile as close as possible. But for that reason the plane goes into the vertical speed mode rather than open descent. So let's now say that we're getting cleared back to leg 2. Nav, the plane is initially going to remain in vertical speed mode. However, there's two options for you. You can either just push in order to go back in a descent mode, or you could pull in order to go in an open descent, or you could just maintain vertical speed mode. However, this video is not going to be a debate between whether open descent or vertical speed is better, but a discussion on whether selected or managed is better. And the answer here is that whenever you are flying along your FMS flight plan, and whenever your air traffic controller wants you to fly along the published procedure, it is always best to use managed modes, versus when you shall deviate from the published procedure, it is usually best to use a selected mode, rather than edit the FMS to insert all those ATC restrictions in there. And that's the basic theory between managed and selected vertical modes. Now, let's just stay on our approach profile here for a moment, and we are going to discuss how we are going to fly this approach using selected or managed modes in terms of the speed mode. Contrary to Boeing's, in Airbus you can use managed speed while using selected on the rest of the modes. The advantage in that is that you can easier control your target speeds, and you don't have to select them manually when you're extending flaps, for example, like you need to do on Boeing aircraft. So we are fully prepared now for the automatic approach for an ILS approach 14 left. The runway is inside on our 12 o'clock already, and we're about to intercept the ILS down here. You can see we've already overflown the deceleration point, which is why the approach phase has activated itself, and we're set up for a config 3 approach into runway 14 left. Now, by default, the managed speed is going to maintain your green dot speed or the respective flap speeds as applicable. We're going to see this in a few moments, where the airplane is now bringing up thrust in order to maintain green dot speed, even though the target is our V approach. So that's how the managed logic in terms of the speed works on the approach. Now when we're going to go flaps 1, as we are going to do now, then the airplane is going to decelerate to the S speed. However, if you were to go selected, you can actually take the plane below those speeds all the way into the VLS band. Now, VLS is the amber band that you can see on the approach. So it is called the lowest selectable speed. So the lowest speed that your auto throttle is actually going to fly you into. As a practical example, you can always take the airplane below the S speed, but it is not going to allow you to go into the lowest selectable, so into the amber band over there. Now, the amber band in Airbus aircraft is exclusively an indication of what auto thrust is going to do for you. It is not an aerodynamically unsafe area to fly in. Below the VLS band, you then got the alpha protection and the alpha max, which are aerodynamic limits of the airplane. Now, as I mentioned, right now, auto thrust is going to maintain the S speed for us over here. But if we now take the landing gear down, and I am going to select it, and select, for example, 150 knots, then the airplane should go below the S speed in selected modes. But if you use managed modes, the airplane is basically always going to fly the most optimal speed for you, as you can see over here. So in selected, it would have maintained the S speed, and in managed, it's going to go all the way down to what you have selected yourself, unless that is within the VLS band that you got down here. So that much about basic Airbus theory and how that stuff is going to work. Now, I know that you guys like to see my landings, so let's show you a little landing over here in order to end this video. But I would already like to say thank you very much for watching, everyone. Hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you did, then do let me know in the comments below, and let me know by hitting that like button, as it does really help out the channel. I would like to say thank you very much now, and hope that I'm going to see you all again on the next one. And if you really like what I'm doing on the channel here, and if I'm doing a smooth landing, then don't forget to subscribe for more content like this in the future. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and if you really love what I'm doing, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Now, enough talking for this one, let's go ahead and make this one a smooth landing, and that is going to be the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all again on the next one. Land.
100 above.
Checked.
300. Minimum.
Continue.
200. 100. 50. 40, 30, 20, retard, 5.
Spoilers, reverse green, decel. 70 knots. And that's it, my friends. Thank you very much for watching, and I see you all again on the next one.